Why are you so excited about robotics?
There are forecasts out there that robotics and AI will eliminate 400 to 800 million jobs in the next 6 years.
What does robotics and AI level 1 look like as we go into 2025 and 26?
If you look at the impact in the marketing industry, and I know that your company utilizes AI pretty heavily, right? Are you going to hire somebody that doesn't know AI?
I think it's a very bad idea as a parent to just say, I'll send my kid to school and that's it. That's their education.
I really believe that we're coming into a period where if you don't have robotics and AI literacy, or at least one of them, you are going to be
All right, boys and girls, we got Dennis Kambeitz, CEO of Easy Robot in the house. And I think we're going to scare the crap out of you today. Dennis, what's up?
Hey, Mark, how are you? Things are great. How you doing?
I'm excellent. Dennis, why are you so excited about robotics?
Well, robotics and AI are transforming all industries and all aspects of our lives. And I'm just on a relentless pursuit to try to get this literacy and education to as many people, specifically as many youth as possible.
Yeah, but why? I mean, we hear that all the time, like it's going to change everything. I mean, I've heard Elon say we're going to have 8 billion humanoid robots, personal use robots within the next decade or so. I don't think that we can fully comprehend how different the world's going to look like in 10 years.
Yeah, okay. So I mean, I fly around the world. I speak at education conferences, robotics conferences, tech conferences, sometimes like oil and gas conferences, helping people understand the impact that robotics and AI are going to have. Mark, there has never been anything in the history of man that comes close to what we're going to see. We are in the midst of an absolute paradigm shift, and frankly, the vast majority of people don't understand what's coming and aren't prepared for it. And, just some top level statistics. There are forecasts out there. These aren't my numbers, so don't shoot the messenger, but there are forecasts out there that robotics and AI will eliminate 400 to 800 million jobs in the next 6 years. The World Economic Forum is forecasting 1 billion people will need retraining. Now, if you think about the scope of change that is and the speed with which it's happening, it is unfathomable, unachievable. And this is what we see from AI as it sits today. And, you can't wake up in the morning without there being new AIs launched that are completely transforming industries and science and, whole aspects of people's lives. And I really believe that we're coming into a period where if you don't have robotics and AI literacy, or at least one of them, you are going to be massively, massively disadvantaged. And so one of the interesting things, I mentioned that I fly around to education conferences. I've talked to more than 25,000 educators, helped them understand the changes that are coming. And by their own admission, like this is them evaluating themselves, this isn't me, I would say easily 90%, potentially 95% of educators today do not feel like they understand what is coming or feel like they know what they need to do to get their kids ready. Now, those statistics are, from a youth perspective, if you're a parent, man, those statistics are very alarming. We're in the greatest workforce and societal transition in history, and almost nobody understands what's coming. And if you don't understand what's coming, how can you properly prepare our youth, right? So but when we talk about 400 to 800 million jobs going away, 1 billion people needing retraining, Stalin's got a quote that he's famous for, and it is basically this: one person's death is a tragedy, 1 million people's death is a statistic. So when we start talking about 400 to 800 million people losing their employment, it's overwhelming. It's like it doesn't compute. We can't, 1 billion people needing retraining. We can't process that information. So what I often do when I'm talking at education conferences is I go industry by industry. And I'll say, these are the changes that are happening in transportation, retail, hospitality. And I'll build a picture. And the picture shows that the future is going to be incredible for some people and it's going to be very challenging for others. And a great example of this is, I usually start in transportation. I've been doing this for 12 years. So 12 years ago, I'd say, hey, have you ever, who's heard of self-driving vehicles? And at that point in time, nobody had. And they're not mainstream today. They're on the road, right? I was in Austin, Texas, and I was walking through an intersection and a Waymo vehicle went past me. Phoenix, I've seen the same thing. We've had self-driving trucks up in Canada, in oil sands, and down in Australia. So this technology is here. It's not rampant and widespread yet. But what I like to do is to talk to educators. When I'm talking to them, I say, if we have self-driving vehicles, do we need truck drivers, bus drivers, taxi drivers? And, I'm not suggesting that this technology is going to take away every job, but we have to be realistic. It's going to take away a number of them. And transportation is the largest employer in America, and I would assume in pretty much every country. The impact just in transportation, I get this information, this next bit from Tony Robbins. The impact in transportation will be roughly the equivalent to what we saw with COVID. That's the job loss. Now, COVID was pretty challenging for a lot of people. That's one sector. It's one industry, right? And what I try to do when I'm talking to people is so that they understand kind of what we're headed into is if we're talking about a truck driver and they've lost their job, you've been a truck driver for 20, 30 years, you lose your job. What kind of skills do you have to feed your family the next day? And the answer, and this is not picking on truck drivers, but the answer is most of them, probably not many. Most of us don't have skills beyond our career, right? We get good at our career and then we live our life, right? But, so what kind of skills, if a truck driver loses their job on a Tuesday, what kind of skills do they have on a Wednesday to get a job? And the number one answer people give me is maybe they can go into retail. And I'm like, well, let's take a look at what's happening in retail. You've got automated checkouts. You've got warehouse robots. They're working on robots that can stock shelves, customer service robots that, by the way, know every language. They could know where every product is. They could know real-time inventory in the store. So retail, and then you've got brick and mortar retail, but you've got online retail. Retail, still healthy, but a lot of the business goes online. And when you look at basic economic principles, and we're on an entrepreneur podcast here, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that if you've got a brick and mortar store and you lose 20 or 30% of your customers, that has an impact on how many people you can employ. That has an impact on how much money you make, what kind of footprint you can have, the types of products you're carrying. So online retail is completely transforming, brick and mortar retail. And that's without AI and robotics coming into the brick and mortar retail, which of course they are. So retail needs less people that are of low technical skill. Like again, Amazon and stuff like, what's a retail job look like at Amazon? Somebody that's doing warehouse optimization, AI, robotics, it's search engine optimization, data analysis. It's not somebody that's got a scanner and they're taking your groceries across the scanner, right? So retail can't absorb transportation. It's also going through this change. Hospitality, we're going to have robotic coffee shops, and there's a hotel in Japan that's got 10 staff. The rest of the hotel is serviced by robots. Robotic restaurants. There's a McDonald's, I believe, in Texas. And I was told there's one in Colorado, but I haven't confirmed that have got no people in it. If you're in the hospitality sector, you need to understand these changes that are coming and start to prepare. Now, the technology is not going to take every job, but it's going to take a number of them. And what's going to happen is we're going to see a situation where if you have robotics and AI literacy, you're going to be advantaged. If you don't, you're not. Anyway, I don't want to run through every industry, but even things like marketing, right? If you look at the impact in the marketing industry, and I know that your company utilizes AI pretty heavily, right? Are you going to hire somebody that doesn't know AI at this point?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Right? I was looking for a project manager, and I didn't have one resume cross my desk that said, I know how to use AI. Not one, which stunned me. And some of the people I interviewed had some ChatGPT knowledge, at least, some degree of AI understanding wasn't sitting on their resume. And I'm like, man, people that didn't get hired, I told them, put that on your resume. That's your number one employable skill. If you go into that meeting and the HR person says to you, what makes you special? You're like, well, I understand how to utilize AI within a project management framework, and describe a little bit of it. And the HR person is going to gloss over because they're not going to understand what you're talking about, but they're going to know that they need that expertise in their company, right? It's going to become such a massive differentiator. And right now, we're at such a golden time for people that are proactive, because the people that learn to understand AI and implement it are going to reap a tremendous benefit. But it's going to be a relatively brief window, because eventually this will become a literacy, and it's going to become a scenario where if you don't understand it, you don't get a job. Right now, it makes you highly desirable. Shortly, a lack of those skills will make you undesirable, right? And a lot of people, and I deal with in education, it looks to me very similar to when I was in school a few summers ago, back when, if you were interested in learning computer science, you could take, where I am, programming 10, 20, and 30. But if you weren't interested in specifically learning how to program, you didn't touch a computer. Now, at some point after I graduated, they realized, hey, wait a second. If if the transportation industry is using computers and the medical industry is using computers and all these industries are going to use computers, computer literacy is actually going to be pretty important. So at some point in time after I graduated, the education industry pivoted and started to focus on computer literacy for everybody and proficiency and mastery for the people that are interested. And that's the same change that we have to make within the education industry with regards to robotics and AI. But with the computer industry, we got 10, 15 years to make this nice slow transition because it took a long time for the computer industry to grow up. We had to shrink a mainframe from the size of a classroom to the point where it's fitting on your wrist, right? The hard work has been done. Robotics and AI are going to roll out and transform industry after industry as fast as people can come up with great ideas, right? You think about the impact ChatGPT has had. That's one. And then DeepSeek comes out and it changes everything again. Everything is going to change so rapidly. Really, people need to start to understand that you just have to stay on top of this stuff. And if you do, you're going to be massively valuable to the companies you work in. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in, this reality is going to exist.
Yeah, it's absolutely every single industry. And I think you've done a good job, Dennis, of kind of summarizing the magnitude of the problem. And I think, this is a 10-minute answer. And by the way, great answer, lots of data, lots of facts. And I think that really encapsulates this problem to a greater degree, because when people hear about the whole thing, 1 billion jobs, it's transportation, it's hospitality, it's retail, it becomes such a large problem that I can't wrap my head around it. I'm just going to watch Netflix because this is just too much for me to even think about comprehending. And it reminds me of trying to eat the entire sandwich in one bite, when now is the time you can start taking smaller bites to prepare yourself. So I guess the question I have for you, Dennis, is, as we go into a place where robotics are starting to be ubiquitous and AI ubiquitous across all these different platforms, what's the first bite that I should be taking? And how can I actually start to say, I'm learning, I'm growing? What's the first bite? What does robotics and AI level 1 look like as we go into 2025 and 26?
Okay, so if I look at it, I'll dial it down first to an education perspective, just because and I don't want to pile on more problem here, but I just we have to understand the scope of challenge ahead of us. So almost no schools are teaching about AI. There are schools that I've talked to, principals, that make comments like, we have to stop our kids from using AI. We have to find a way to stop that from happening, which is of course impossible because the kids are going to do it at home. But to have the mindset that you want to stop it, and my comment to the principal back was, and this was a high school principal, I recognize that you need to find a way to make sure the kids are learning the core things they need to learn. I agree with you on that. But you do understand that the day they walk out your front door, if they understand AI, they are instantly employable. Is that really a skill that you want to stop them from acquiring? Or should you lean into that? Right? And so we've got this fear about these technologies. And I think the best place to start is probably load up a YouTube video, right? Find mentors, people like yourself that understand the technology, that can help guide them and utilize it as well. Within some, like I said, virtually no schools are teaching AI, a few, but it's small pockets. Enrollment in robotics in high schools that have robotics program averages 3% of boys and 0.3% of girls. So in a school with 2,000 kids, 1,000 boys and 1,000 girls, they have a robotics program, on average 30 boys and 3 girls. 1,967 not getting any education about these two technologies that are going to change everything, right? So a big part of it is, one of the big barriers to people learning this is it feels overwhelming because it's like walking into the cockpit of a 747. And there's all the dials and levers, and you don't know what any of them do. So you just got to start dissecting it and taking it, small bite by small bite. Great place to start is probably ChatGPT. A lot of people play with that, but that's a very powerful tool, right? If you understand how to prompt it properly and build your own GPTs and hit OpenAI and stuff like that. Like our robots, I've got a robot head here. You could have a physical conversation with this robot head, and ChatGPT would talk back to you, right? And
by the way, the other day, and I will say that I think it's a very bad idea as a parent to just say, I'll send my kid to school and that's it. That's their education. We have an obligation to our kids to train them and teach them. My daughter was in a coding and robotics class, a club after school, because I realized how important it was. And the other day, my kids don't even say Google it anymore, by the way. All you SEO people out there, my kids don't say Google, they say ask ChatGPT. It's unbelievable that even just that minor transformation. But my son the other day, he's got my phone and he's in the corner. I think I was watching a football game or something. And he's got my phone. He has ChatGPT, and I just pay attention. He's having like a 10-minute dialogue with ChatGPT. He's 5 years old, and he's just asking questions. He's curious. He's going back and forth. And to your point, that's a pretty good place to start. Just use the product.
Use the tools. Yeah, use them. And it doesn't matter if you're not good at it today. Like, this is the beautiful thing about the timing of this chat, Mark, is, and in the work that you're doing, the work that we're doing, it's early days, right? There's still time for people to get these tools, right? I kind of parallel it to you're in a bay on the ocean and you're playing on the beach and the water starts pulling out, right? Which is a sign of a big wave coming in, right? So there's a tsunami coming and you're on the beach. Now you've got time, right? The tsunami is hitting, but it's not hitting for a little bit. You can still get yourself off the beach and get the high ground. But if you stay on the beach, if you ignore this, it will sweep you away. If you get this literacy, it will propel you forward. You'll have a better life. You'll make, I never like to distill things down to money, but you'll make more money. You'll do more incredible things. You'll impact more people. You'll be able to transform the world to what you believe it should be, at least within your bubble and stuff like that. You just have a greater impact. And it all starts with loading up ChatGPT and I just say having a dialogue with it. But I mean, there's some other things people have to understand as well. Sometimes the I in AI is not that I, right? Sometimes it comes back with some crazy answers, right? So not that intelligent. It's getting better all the time, but we're going to see things like feedback loops, right? If everybody's using AI to write blogs, well, the blog is going to be written from the perspective of the AI, not you. And so then we're going to get a tidal wave of similar thought. And it's going to make it hard for unique thought to punch through. And this is where people's individual skills come through and stuff. And Mark, it's interesting. I'm the CEO of a robotics company. I'm not a roboticist. I'm not a programmer. I'm not an engineer, which makes me really, really effective when communicating about robotics because I don't talk at an engineering level, right? So some people that are intimidated by technology, by robotics and AI, the good news is everybody else feels the same way as you. So if you take 2 steps forward, you're leading a wave, right? You've got more knowledge than all the people that are behind you, and you've got the ability to benefit from that and help the people that are still behind you. Like when I go talk to teachers, I'm super effective at helping them understand this stuff because I didn't come from this background. I'm not from inside the box. I'm from outside of the box, which is where the vast majority of society is. And when you get people with diverse interests and passions and personalities, and they start to apply AI, then you get the benefits of AI across the human experience, right? Which is frankly really important. If the general public is afraid of AI and robotics and doesn't get into them, then what the future is going to look like is going to be created by a very narrow subset of thought, right? Engineering mindset. And so it's really important, when we teach robotics and AI, it's not about making roboticists and programmers. It's about making people that feel confident applying technology to what's in their heart, right? And you want to help the environment? That's not going to be done by going out and picking up garbage. I mean, that will help, but you want to make a big impact? That's robotics and AI. You want to be in the medical profession and save a bunch of lives? Great. You're going to be using robotics and AI. Like these 2 things are just going to become ubiquitous with virtually everything. So if I'm a parent, my number one most important thing is I'm looking for robotics and AI clubs, courses that my kids can take, because as you mentioned, the schools, like your daughter took it after school because the schools have a hard time implementing it because they're so busy with their, 9 to 3 curriculum, right? They've got all of their boxes they have to check, and education moves so slow. It's really going to fall to parents and to individuals to try to look after themselves for at least a period of time until the institutions can catch up. right? So
Well, I definitely agree. There's no way I'm abdicating this type of training because, quite frankly, we don't know exactly where it's going. All we know is we need to be using it. I had a professor from USC on the show, Sid Mahasib, last year. And one of the things that he would tell students, he's a university level professor, once his students come in, he says, by the way, you're required to use AI in this course. And I was like, that's really a profound way of looking at education because most teachers, when you come in as a student, they're going to say, if I catch you using AI, you're going to be kicked out of the course. And I just feel like, wow, that's a very different fundamental understanding of the time that we're in. And the problem, to your point, is I think most teachers, most university systems, most curriculum, highly bureaucratic. They can't move quick. And quite frankly, they probably don't understand this stuff all that well. So the question is, how do we get that lift so that people actually adapt and learn? Because the common thing that I've heard, Dennis, not to go off on a huge tangent here, but there's something that people say that I understand, but I really don't like. And they say stuff like, well, AI and robots won't take your job. Someone using AI and robots will take your job. And my point is, well, A, you still lost your job. And B, where there were 100,000 jobs before, now there's only 10,000. So now everyone's kind of fighting over a much smaller piece of cheese. It's not this huge block of cheese. Everyone's fighting for the small block of cheese. And you got 90% of the workforce that ain't going to even be able to get at the cheese anymore. And we live in a world where most people are not like reading books and educating and spending their free time learning a new skill. So I don't know how we change that. I don't know how we shift that.
It's so interesting, Mark. One thing that, as we're talking there, it reminded me of a presentation I did in New Jersey. This goes back several years. But I had talked about how robotics was going to impact transportation, hospitality, retail, and basically eliminate low-tech jobs, right? Manual labor, low-skill jobs. And, so I talked about how waiters, waitresses, chefs, drivers, landscapers, in many cases, a wide range of jobs that are easily takeable or doable by robotics and AI. And then I said to the teachers, because they're sitting there and they're kind of absorbing it, but it's not really hitting home. And so I said to them, okay, I want to frame this for you this way. How many of you went to university? Of course, all the hands go up because they're teachers. Like, okay. How many of you had a job in university? 70% of the hands stay up. Like, how many of you would not have been able to stay at university or go to university if you did not have your job? How many of you needed to work your way through university? And 30% of the hands stayed up. And my response then was, what kind of jobs did you do? Waiter, bartender, chef. And I'm like, it's a laundry list of all the jobs that are disappearing. So my comment to them was, well, if you couldn't go to university because you couldn't support yourself, and you can't get that job because that job is now super competitive because there's millions of people fighting for those remaining low-tech jobs. Now what's your future look like? You're not sitting in this classroom as a teacher, are you? And all of a sudden, the light bulb went on. It's like, this impacts me, right? High-functioning me, right? And so it's important to understand this is going to hit everything, everything. And the biggest thing that needs to happen is people need to understand that it doesn't matter what career you're in, take a look at it and do some research and figure out how technology, specifically robotics and AI, are impacting your industry and your career. And when you see that, then ask yourself, if I understood robotics and AI, how could I be a part of that change? And if you take that leadership type position now, then you're okay. And there's a lot of belief out there, and I'm kind of on the fence about this, honestly, Mark. There's a lot of belief that, okay, there's 400 to 800 million jobs going away. There'll be 400 to 800 million new jobs. I'm not convinced. Yeah. I can say, your face is exactly the same way I feel about it.
Yeah.
This is not like all of the previous tech switches that we've seen. This is not the printing press. This isn't even the internet, which was a massive change. This is something, it's its own animal. And I'm not sure there's going to be an equal number of new jobs, but here's what I do know. There's going to be a lot of new high-tech jobs and a lot of demand for people that understand the technology. So if people make the effort to get this education now, then they're going to be advantaged. And people should be looking for opportunities that are going to be I don't want to say future proof, but that are going to give them the opportunity to thrive. Forgive the shameless self-promotion for just 1 second here. We teach teachers to teach robotics, and 90 to 95% of those teachers have no prior robotics experience, right? So we can give people the skills they need to be successful. We teach people to run robotics and AI clubs and build a business in that. There's a lot of changes coming, but if I was to go, what's a pretty safe industry? I got to think robotics and AI education is right up there. Right? That's not going away. How it looks and stuff might tweak and massage around, but that's not changing, right? So, we help people understand those things and be able to teach it. And with regards to teaching teachers and kids, I mean, I've demonstrated and taught robotics to 25,000 students personally. 100% of them can do everything I ask them to do. They're programming our robots to recognize colors, to respond to their voices and verbal commands. They're programming robots to recognize people and greet them by name. And by the way, Mark, those are 10-year-olds, 8-year-olds, right? And if the 10-year-olds and 8-year-olds can learn this, and I know that they've got beautifully elastic minds at that age, but we've never run into a person that couldn't learn this. And so everybody has the ability. It's just that people have personal fear. And the beautiful thing is you don't have to learn it all in one bite. But if you start eating that sandwich one bit at a time, you're going to get that whole sandwich, right? And as you start to maybe you're going to get halfway through the sandwich and go, you know what? I got enough sandwich. I know enough about AI to be able to apply it to my job, in the oil patch or, in transportation or whatever it might be. And that's where the real beauty of this lands. If you can apply robotics and AI to your career and to what your passion is, man, it opens up a world of potential. So I think that we're going to get to a really good place as society in 10 or 15 years, but it's going to be a very interesting ride to get there. And
it's going to be very painful.
For millions of people, it will. And for millions of people, incredible.
The opportunities are going to be tremendous. And that's why I'm optimistic. It's going to be very painful for a lot of people. The opportunities are going to be massive for the people that start taking action now, 100%. But I do want to just highlight one thing here before, I know your time is very valuable, Dennis, in that you mentioned 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds, they get this. And frankly, they're growing up in this AI robotic world. So they're just naturally going to be, I think, I don't want to use the word better, but they're going to naturally be more comfortable with it than, say, the 50-year-old attorney in Arkansas, right? But message to you, 50-year-old attorney in Arkansas, you do have a competitive advantage, and that's years of experience, and that's critical thinking. So whereas that 18-year-old who's fresh out of high school or going to college, they're going to be able to use AI to be very proficient. They're going to be able to go from 0 to 7 immediately, but they're not going to know the nuance. They're not going to know those really tiny details that can that make the huge difference. But you, as an expert with decades of experience, can leverage and market yourself as, I have decades of experience, plus I use the tools. So you go from using AI to become efficient. So where the beginner goes from beginner to proficient, you're an expert using AI to be efficient. And I think that is where I want to be as a team leader, as a business owner. And that's where I want my entire team to be. Because I'll tell you, Dennis, I've got about a dozen team members and they're nervous. They're nervous. It's really easy to edit videos and edit audio and create social media. It's really easy. But the AI doesn't understand the psychology of the viewer, doesn't understand the full psychological process that goes on. It doesn't understand the small nuance that takes something from being okay and average to being excellent. And that is, I think, where we want to be as mature business owners, personally.
Yeah, no, I think that's critical. I had a conversation with the Society of somebody from the Society of Petroleum Engineers a few years back about doing a presentation with their membership. And the lady I was talking to, she had said that what she had seen so far, this goes back again a couple of years, is that the companies that were trying AI were not having success at that point. And really, after having a good long conversation, what it distills down to is exactly what you just described, Mark, where people that are graduating from the universities that understand AI, these data scientists, these programmers, they understand AI fantastically. They don't know anything about petroleum. And then you've got the C-suite of the petroleum companies, and they don't understand anything about AI. And so the C-suite doesn't even know what to say to the AI people, and the AI people don't know what to say to the petroleum people, right? And if this is your 50-year-old lawyer from Arkansas. If you understand the profession and you get some AI or robotics literacy, you sit right in the middle as that whisperer. Hugely, hugely valuable position for the companies. That's really the huge opportunity that's out there today, right? And I mean, if you're in a position where you're in a large corporation or something, your department is probably scheduled for a cutback, right? So if you've got the skills, like these new world skills, you won't be the person getting cut back, and in fact, you'll have greater opportunity, right? But I mentioned earlier the World Economic Forum is forecasting 1 billion people will need retraining. They're forecasting the cost of that. The average cost is $24,000 US. And then when we think about what percentage of society has $24,000 sitting in their bank account to retrain themselves while they support their family, right? So the right time for everybody to get proactive is now, like right now. And if you do that, then you can start to make the most valuable and important gains while you're still employed and stuff. And if sometimes taking these courses or stepping out and starting something new takes a little bit of money, takes a bit of a leap of faith, but you're never going to be better prepared than you are today, right? Like, if you're, for example, if you're a truck driver and you're gainfully employed, you can now spend your evenings easily starting to understand AI and starting to, develop these new world skills. You lose your job and everything is like, now you're in panic mode. How do I survive? Right? And I was talking to a school district. This was about robotics, but the same principle is definitely true with AI. And her comment to me was, we have 600 schools in our city. We can't possibly afford to put robotics or AI into, education into those schools. What do you propose I do? And I said, are you asking me what I propose the school does or what you do? And she said, me, what do you think I should do? And I said, you should move. And she was surprised by the answer. But if you're in a place where the youth and the adults are not going to have these skills, your place is in for an economic kick, a financial kick, and that brings societal pain, right? During COVID, there was job loss that was temporary, and the government gave people checks and money to try to keep the economy flowing, right? This one is not a blip. This one is not temporary. This is a paradigm shift. The jobs that go away are never coming back, right? And people have to understand that, right? If we see a scenario where we get 10 to 15 to 20% job loss, well, those people then stop going out to the restaurants. The restaurant industry suffers. The people in the restaurant industry stop buying big screen TVs. The retail industry suffers. And the whole economy starts to spiral and slow down. And then you get a situation where you get cities going bankrupt, like Detroit went bankrupt in 2012, right? These are going to be very real situations where some cities are going to do well, some states are going to do well, and some aren't, right? I think the number one thing that I tell educators to help them understand the scope of change that is coming, because it's going to get very competitive. About 8 years ago, I was doing the opening keynote at a robotics conference in New York City. I did my presentation, and this was heavy duty robotics, like robot arms and cages, industrial drones, like big stuff. Over the next 2 days, I met 20 to 25 people from the fashion industry. That surprised me 8 years ago. And I'm like, the first couple I thought, that's really weird. They must have a personal interest in robotics, because to me, fashion design is very creative and not technical. And robotics is, engineering, programming, physics, math, very technical. And so the first couple I thought, that's weird. They must have a personal interest. But you meet 3 or 4 people in an hour and you start to say, wait a second, there's a pattern. So I started asking them, why are there so many of you here? Like, you're the 4th person I've met in an hour from fashion. What they all told me was, if you want to get a job in the fashion industry, 2 of the most important skills are 3D printing and robotics. 8 years ago. Now that's crazy. There's like, right? Who would think that? Now, to be fair, I am at a robotics conference, so I am meeting people that are predisposed to that way of thinking, right? But I started to think about what the reason for that was, and here's what I came up with. Suppose this circle represents all of the fashion that has ever been created throughout history. It's all inside this circle. If you add 3D printing and robotics and now AI, what you can create is greater. With 3D printing, new fashions that can't be created any other way. With robotics and AI, intelligent clothing that responds to light, sound, temperature, wearer's own biorhythms. So we get things like Fitbits and smartwatches and smart shoes and smart socks, wide range of wearable tech. So Mark, I'll ask you the same question I've asked of 25,000 educators, and I know what your answer is going to be, but it's an important exercise. If you own a fashion design company and you're hiring one new fashion designer, do you hire the person that gives you this potential, the smaller potential, or the greater potential?
I want the whole circle. I want the big circle. I want the whole pie.
Right. And so here's the interesting thing. 25,000 out of 25,000 educators have said this. Everybody knows. Of course you want the big circle. And, and it's incredibly common sense. But what is not happening is the next thought, which is the most important one. If everybody would hire the person that has those high-tech skills over the person that doesn't have the high-tech skills, then we have to assume that once there are people available that have those high-tech skills, people without them don't get hired. And I think everybody listening to your podcast needs to ask themselves, am I somebody with those high-tech skills? Because we're very quickly coming up to that point in time. It's going to get very competitive from country to country, state to state, city to city, right? Where some regions are going to dive into robotics and AI, and their population is just going to be brilliant and flourish, and they're going to bring so much economic benefit into that city or state. And there's going to be some places that don't, right? And the places that don't are going to suffer the job loss, because the job loss comes for us all, comes to every community in the world. But the new opportunity only comes to the regions where there's a large number of people that have these skills. And these people create abundance and opportunity. And you have to determine, are you somebody that has those high-tech skills? Are you desirable and hireable over the next 5 years? And if you don't have robotics and AI literacy, or at least one or the other, that answer is increasingly no. And, I hate to be the downer, but people have to understand this is a reality. And it doesn't matter if you like it or not. That's just what's happening. The one more thing that I think is really important. Talked about it being very regional and very competitive. When I tour across the USA, because I work globally, Mark, when I'm in the USA is the small circle. China and India are racing towards the large circle. And when we think about the impact that something like the DeepSeek AI has on OpenAI's business and stuff like that, like there's going to be massive winners and losers in all aspects of this. And if the US wants to preserve its fantastic way of life, then it's really important that the US has a lot of these high-tech people. It's critically important.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I don't want to go off into politics, but I've got to say the way that we have repositioned ourselves as a company with Silicon Valley and the innovation and having someone that really knows AI in crypto, really kind of pushing things forward. I'm very optimistic that we're going to get that back on track. I mean, we could go down a rabbit hole of, well, we need the energy and we need the manufacturing and we need the raw materials. That's a whole nother thing. But what I will say is this, very important that you have the knowledge, the skills, the literacy between AI and robotics. But in my opinion, it's not just enough to have that knowledge, but you also, I think, need to understand how to properly position and package yourself and your brand digitally. If I go to your website and your website should be talking about, we're using AI and this is how we're doing it. We're innovating in this way and this is how we're doing it. These are the checks and balances we have to make sure that we don't have crazy wonky results. You're going in for an interview, like you said. You better have AI literate on your resume. You better at least, and quite frankly, you don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to be 100% expert, but you need to know enough, and you need to know how to position yourself as someone who not only knows but is learning. That would be my challenge to everyone. And as Dennis, I do want to just encourage everyone to go to easy-robot.com, easy-robot.com. Quite frankly, we should be reaching out to Dennis and his organization to see how we can get that stuff in our schools. I want Easy Robot in my school. I want the Robotics and AI Club in my school because my kid's future depends on it.
Thank you for that. I I've been doing this for 12 years, Mark, and my background is not, like I said, it's not robotics and AI. I came into this quite by accident. I'm probably the same as all of your listeners, and, where they're like thinking, well, I can't do AI, I can't do robotics, this isn't for me. That would have been me 10 years ago. In fact, I would have been so sure that I wouldn't have been in robotics and AI that if we had met, 13 years ago, I would have bet you my house against a donut that I would never do this. Right? That's how sure I was. I mean, I like donuts, but that's a pretty inequitable trade. But I started to do a little bit of research into it. I started to understand the scope of change that was coming. And for myself, I got really lucky, right place, right time. I started to I felt like I was looking in the crystal ball because I had somebody working for me that was building what has become the best educational robotics platform in the world, the Easy Robot platform. And so I just started helping him try to grow his company. And through that process, started to understand that robotics and AI are going to change everything. And I'm like, I know about the next trend before it's here. So I jumped into this 12 years ago going, I don't know anything about this, but I know when this hits in a big way, I'm going to be right in the middle of it. And that's what I would encourage people to do now. Just get into the middle of it. Whatever steps you can take, jump in. The best time to start learning this was 2 years ago. The second best time is tomorrow or tonight, right? Right now.
That's right. Well, Dennis, thanks for coming on, giving us a wake-up call, and also not just focusing on the pessimistic, but some of the optimistic, the opportunities. I think the opportunities are going to be tremendous for those that do take the action.
Yeah.
So go to easy-robot.com, get your kids educated, because their life depends on it, quite frankly.
Awesome.
Don't miss it.
Thanks, Mark.